Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie, and is anyone else so depressed that October is over? I'm so sad. Yes, I am sad that October is over because I really felt like it flew by, even though everyone was like getting out their Halloween decorations as early as August. I still felt like the Halloween season went too fast. I'm so sad that it's over. It is my absolute favorite time of year. And also because November doesn't really get to be its own thing. It's just like everybody is in full Christmas mode already. And I'm not. Here in Georgia, it is very warm throughout November. Although that being said, it has been freezing the past couple days. But it really does not feel like Christmas. It's full fall mode here, and so I'm trying to savor that, but everybody else is moving on, and it just makes for a weird vibe, and I just want it to be Halloween again, so I'm a bit sad by that. But nonetheless, time moves on, and here we are in November, which means it is time to wrap up everything that I read in October and talk through some of my November reading plans. I honestly had a bit of a weird reading month in October, especially for the first 2 weeks. I just could not find anything that I actually really wanted to read. I couldn't find anything that was giving any good vibes. I couldn't find anything I was really enjoying. I was kind of struggling through a lot of things. So the result was that I actually had more DNFs this 1 month than I think I've had in the entire rest of my year. So yeah, suddenly overnight I became a mood reader, and honestly I'm still feeling that mood reading feeling, which is just so unlike me. So I'm not sure what that's about, but we had kind of a weird month in October. Okay, I will list these books in the order that I read them. Let's get into it. First up, we have Starling House by Alex E. Pharaoh, and listen, I already have an entire video on my channel, a rant review about this book, so I'm not going to talk about it. It was out of my mind. I didn't even remember reading this until I just looked at my list right here. It was a rant review. I gave it 2 stars. If you want to know what I actually thought about that book, go watch that video, but it was not for me. Next up, I read The Walking Dead Compendium 3! Yay! Oh my gosh, another one done, and I am finally at the end of this series. I will not spoil what I thought of this one in particular, because my video of me reading all of these books, the entire Walking Dead series, will be live in December, of course assuming that I finish it, which at this point I don't see why I wouldn't. But yes, I will save my thoughts, but I did read this, and it makes me cheer every time I finish another one of these, because they have been an ongoing challenge this year. Although that being said, like, they do look massive, and of course they're massive, but reading them actually does not take longer than like a normal book. Like, I probably read this in like 3 days. So it looks intimidating, and I act very intimidated by them, but once you start reading them, they fly by, and you read them and just, you could probably read the first couple in a day if you really wanted to. So, but regardless, very happy to have read that. And now getting into the bulk of my reading month, most of which I haven't even talked about in any video. So this is probably the first time you're going to be hearing me talk about these things, unless you follow my Instagram, in which you get live reading updates. So check the link down below and follow me on Instagram. Okay, moving on. We have Come Closer by Sarah Gran, which this was not on my list to read for this October. Of course, it's been on my radar for a long time. I know a lot of horror readers, everyone talks about this book. Everyone loves this book. So I was so happy to just decide to pick it up. I was out book shopping with my friend. I saw it, I grabbed it, and then I read it in one sitting. So, I mean, it's a novella. It's very, very short. It's a quick read, and I had an interesting time with it. I ended up giving it a 3.5 stars. Like, I understand the attachment that people have to it, and I understand why people feel like it is so freaky and like it creeped them out so much. I definitely, like, when I first finished it, I was like, yeah, there are definitely very creepy elements to it, but after I read it, I kind of didn't really think about it anymore. I don't know, like it's definitely solid. And there is definitely a lot of good writing elements in here. Like I do think Sarah Gran really crafted a very intriguing story, and this is a possession story. I haven't even said what this is about. I just assumed everybody knows what this is, but Come Closer is the story of a woman who believes she's being possessed by a demon, and gradually things become more and more unhinged. I definitely understand people's love for this. I thought it was really solid, but maybe didn't live up to all the hype that I had, associated with it. I think that's my thing. Things never live up to the hype for me, but anyway, I'm happy to have grabbed this. I'm happy to have read it, and honestly, like, I do think I might come back to this and maybe have different feelings about it in the future. Maybe I'll like it more. Maybe it just needed time to sink in. Regardless, I'm really happy I read it. And then I read Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. Another book that was not on my list for October, but it has been one that I've wanted to read for a long time. I felt like actually it was being talked about. Like, I felt like these two books were constantly being talked about, and they're short horror, and I hadn't read them yet, and I was just like sick of being left out of the conversation, to be honest. So I picked them both up, and no, I don't understand why people like this one. I understand Come Closer. I get that. I like Ian Reid as a short horror author, but I don't understand the love for Eric LaRocca. I don't. And Things Have Gotten Worse. Yeah, it's disturbing, it's gross, it's all the things that you've heard about it. But for me, it's just like, what was the point of that? What was the point? Like, I don't think I really understood what that book was trying to tell me. If anything, if it was trying to tell me anything, I don't know. I just didn't get it. Like, yes, I was disturbed, but I wasn't necessarily scared. Like, I was not scared at any point. And like, I just was just like, why? What? I think for me, horror has to have some thematic ties. And I just felt like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just like not, maybe I'm not as smart as I think I am, but I just couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out what was interesting about it. I couldn't figure out what people enjoyed about it. It was a no. It was a no from me. I gave it 2 stars. But the thing about it is that Eric LaRocca, like, his stuff is really short, so I think, like, it wouldn't be so hard to pick up stuff from him in the future. But, so this edition, which is, like, a newly released edition, this actually comes with 3 short stories, and Things Have Gotten Worse was, I guess, the best one of the 3. It's hard to really say, but the other 2 were, like, downright bad. So, I don't know. I have not been impressed with Eric LaRocca from what I've read so far, which is very sad because I do feel like a lot of people like him. It's no from me. It's no from me. Next up, I read The Inheritance of Orca Dee by Zoraida Cordova. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I actually listened to this entirely on audiobook, so just bear in mind that might have an effect on my rating, but I just thought this was okay. And I went in like really, really wanting to love it. And to be honest, I can't even like pinpoint exactly what was wrong with it because I think that there's a lot of good stuff in here. There's a lot of stuff that really works. But for some reason, like the pieces just did not come together to create this magical, beautiful story to me. I mean, like I definitely could see why people like this, but something about this was not clicking with me. By the end of the book, I was just dying for this to be over. It just felt like the end really took so long. And it's not even a long audiobook. It's not a long book. Like it just felt really long for some reason. And I think part of it was because I was really having a good time in the first half. It's told in 4 different parts. And in parts 1 and 2, I was like definitely on board. And then 3 and 4 kind of lost me. So this is a magical realism story about the matriarch of this family, Orca Dee. And she is an old woman. She is feeling like she is going to die very soon. So she sends her remaining family members an invitation to come to her house and be given their inheritance ahead of her death. So the family comes together and they receive her gift, and magic begins to happen. So it's magical realism. It's a generational story, which I never do well with generational stories. They're just not, it's not really my favorite trope. And like, that's not even really what was hard for me about it. The magic was weird, but it's just a really long, drawn out story. I guess that is typical of generational stories, but I just felt like it was taking too long. It wasn't clicking perfectly, although there's a lot of good stuff in here too, so I don't know. I gave it a 3.25. It was fine. I don't know that I would recommend it a ton though. And then while I was on vacation, I ended up reading 2 books, those being Chain Gang All-Stars by Nanakwame Aji-Barenya and The Unmaking of June Pharaoh by Adrienne Young. I have a full reading vlog on both of these books, so I highly recommend checking that out. But here's what I'll say. Chain Gang All-Stars is so dang good. It's so good. It hurts my heart, but the writing is so strong. It's well-paced, well-plotted. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who picks this up knowing the plot, of course, and just not enjoying it. So this is a death game media piece. It takes place in an alternate or future world in which imprisoned people have the opportunity to fight in a gladiator-style death match to earn their freedom. And it is a critique of the American prison system. It's a critique of capitalism, institutionalized racism, a whole bunch of stuff from an author this is his debut novel, but I've enjoyed his work in the past, and he's just one to watch for me. I really, really loved what he was doing here, and I can't say enough good things about this book. Unmaking of June Pharaoh by Adrienne Young. Contrary to Chain Gang All-Stars, this book really did nothing for me. I read this in a day, and I really had like genuinely no feelings toward it. It felt very basic, very kind of one note. Oh, hello, Azula. A cat is gonna join us. Good girl. Azula is gonna join us for the rest of this video, and I cannot deny you this beautiful cat content, okay? But anyway, Unmaking of June Pharaoh did not do anything for me. Yeah, I'm gonna unhaul this. It didn't work for me. It's a semi-sci-fi slash fantasy slash romance. It feels kind of like Hallmark movie-esque a little bit, and that's not something that I like. So, but I did give it 3 stars. Like, it was perfectly fine. And then for my book club in the month of October, we read The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas, and I had really high hopes going into this book. I wanted this to be a 5-star read, and in the end it was a 3.5. It was a 3.5. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit disappointed about this book. This is a gothic, haunting ghost story that is set in Mexico, and it's a haunted house story, but set in the 1800s Mexico, which I loved the setting, and I loved the gothic atmosphere. And again, I loved a lot of things about this book, but I felt that the pacing was a little bit off. I just felt like it should have culminated in this big, like, grand, scary ending, and it kind of just like fizzled out. It just wasn't as interesting as I really thought it was going to be. It did a lot of good things. There were some scary moments, like it was engaging enough, but I wanted this to be like a perfect adaptation of Rebecca, just in this like different setting. Like, I was so interested in this as an adaptation of Rebecca, which Rebecca's in there, but it's just not, it did not give me that like, ooh, like amazing 5-star feeling. But that being said, I certainly didn't hate it, and it was a relatively easy read. I gave this a 3.5, and I will continue to read Isabel Cañas. I have her other book, Vampires of El Norte. I'm going to get to it eventually, probably next year, but yeah, I wanted more from this. And finally, the last book that I read in October was How Lucky by Will Leach. I'm certainly mispronouncing his last name. I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry. How Lucky. Okay, this has been on my TBR for a while, and actually, like, looking at this stack, I'm pretty happy because I got through a lot of books that have been on my TBR for a while, so that's very exciting. But How Lucky, this follows a young man in Athens, Georgia, who has a very serious progressive debilitating disease called SMA. I can't remember what it stands for. I'll try to put it on the screen, but basically the disease is so strong that he cannot move any of his muscles. He's at this point in a wheelchair and he cannot speak vocally. So yeah, it's a very unique perspective, but there's also an element here of he witnesses a girl being kidnapped. And so it's kind of a mystery, kind of has this element of him trying to figure out what's going on. But to be honest, largely the book is about just this character living with this disease. And I actually really did enjoy his first person perspective, which I don't typically like first person, but if the character really has a voice and has this, like, you know, very intentional way of speaking with the audience, I really enjoyed that. And that's exactly what happens here. He is talking to the reader directly, and I feel like his humor and his snarkiness is really fun, and he's telling you about this disease, and it's just a really interesting perspective to read from. I thought the writing was really strong. I just didn't think that the mystery element of it was strong. It's actually, it almost feels like the mystery is like pushed on such a back burner in this book, which it just is a little bit like the tonal dissonance is a little bit off because it feels like the mystery should be more prevalent, but at the same time, like, you understand that the character is more important to the overall, you know, book. I don't know. I thought it was honestly better than I was expecting it to be. I've had this on my TBR for a while, and I read this via audiobook, and the audio narrator did a really, really good job. So, you know, props to them, because I don't know how the experience would have changed reading it in a book, but regardless, I liked the writing. I liked the character. It was just kind of weird also having a mystery in there. It was just a little bit odd. But I did end up giving this a 3.5 stars, and, you know, I might recommend it if you are looking for a book that includes a perspective of a disabled character or something like this. Okay, I'm going to talk briefly about the DNFs that I did have, because like I said, I had quite a lot actually. On audiobook, I started to listen to Half a Soul, and I actually did not realize that this was a Regency period piece, and I just started listening on audiobook and I could not do it. I just like could not find it in me to care. So I DNF'd that. I mentioned in my end of year reading plans video that I started Shark Heart and have not finished it, and I haven't picked it up since I made that video. I do plan to read it. It was just too sad. Like, I was just not in the mood to read this, to be honest, but I hope that I can kind of get over that and maybe read it in November, but we'll see. I said that I was going to read Daisy Darker over Halloween weekend, and this was going to be my Halloween read because it takes place on Halloween. Yeah, did not do that. I got a couple pages in. I got 15 pages in, and honestly, I liked what I was reading in those 15 pages, so I do plan to continue on with this. I didn't have the time because I ended up doing, you know, Halloween things. I went to a Halloween party. Like, I just didn't have the time. So this kind of ended up failing, but I do want to read it. And finally, a book that I had already mentioned previously in my end of year video, that's World War Z by Max Brooks. Yeah, I am going to be DNFing this. I thought about it, and I really didn't want to DNF it because I got to page 136. So like, I made significant work, but I just know that I do not have it in me to read the rest of this book. The thing is, this is very heavily military focused. It is literally war, like military personnel talking through their strategy in this zombie war. And don't get me wrong, it's interesting. And actually, it's really interesting. The beginning and the writing is so good. Like, it is actually really genuinely interesting. It's really clever, and it's kind of like Max Brooks is really being very observant about human nature and humanity, and like, it's good. It is good. It's also like it's horrific and so sad, so sad, which of course I knew going in. But one, I was not in the headspace to deal with that. And two, I just can't, I'm bogged down with the amount of military discussion in here. What I did read of this, I really enjoyed, but I'm not interested in reading more military stuff, to be honest. I did really like how it was talking about how humans are the reason that it got to this scale of like this zombie apocalypse. Like it almost could have been preventable and it seemed like there were ways to prevent it, but like humans got in the way. I did like that discussion. So there's a lot that I liked in here. I just don't want to read any more military things. So with that, I will be DNFing. Okay, hi. The lighting is different in this clip because I came back a bit later. I was actually editing the footage that I just filmed, and I was like, I know I had more DNFs than just the small pile I mentioned. I had so many DNFs. So I had to go back through my library borrowing history and see what I DNF'd. And I have a new cat behind me now. This is Zuko. You're just getting great cat content today. They are really showing up. Wow. They're honestly the best Halloween decorations. Okay, back to the DNFs. First one, Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. Whew. I really tried to read this. I tried to read the physical book. I tried to read the audio book. Neither one of them worked for me. This was pitched to me as a Twilight-esque romance, adventure. Maybe there's some supernatural things. I'm not really sure what exactly it was supposed to be. I started reading it, and what I got was that it was about this girl who is in a very ultra religious, super conservative community, and she is assaulted by a man who is like pretty high up in the community. Somehow he ends up dead, and she thinks that she's going to be implicated in that. So her and her friend have to try to cover her tracks or something. I'm not really sure, but I didn't get super far into it. Like I think like definitely less than 50 pages. But I was told that it was Twilight-esque, not that the character is obsessed with Twilight. That is such a weird characteristic. And listen, I was obsessed with Twilight, okay? But like I don't want to read about that. I just don't, like, what, the tone was just like so weird. I just didn't know what to make of that information. I didn't like it. I also did not like, I have been reading so many books that have been set in the South for some reason, unintentionally. I didn't mean to read so many books set in the South all at once, but to be honest, I'm over reading about the South. I'm done with it for a while. So that's why, like, honestly, a lot of books that I do want to read, like When the Reckoning Comes and the new Tiana Reeve-Dew, The Rich Reformatory, both of those sound like really good books, but I need to take a break from the South. So Midnight's Darkest Hour, was gonna read it. It's actually literally dead book club pick for November. So I meant to read this, but I DNF'd it. Next up, Rouge by Mona Awad. I got this from my library and I got the physical copy, and to be honest, I just did not have time to read it. I started reading it, did not get super far in, and it wasn't really that I was like not interested. It was just that, dang, this book is long, and I just didn't think I was going to be able to finish it in the time that I was going to be able to give it back, and it just wasn't really drawing me in. And like I said earlier, like it's just been kind of a weird reading month. I would pick stuff up, nothing was working for me. This was definitely one of those cases where it seemed fine enough, but I wasn't really grabbed by it. And then I started seeing some really mixed reviews, and I was just like, I'm not going to go any farther with this. So I don't know if I'm going to be picking that up in the future, to be honest. It honestly just doesn't seem like something that I would like. The more I hear about it, the more I'm just not interested in it. So yeah, no. And finally, my true last DNF, I think. Oh my gosh, I DNF'd so many books. I could be wrong. But the last book that I remember that I didn't mention, that's The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. This I was meant to read for a book club, but first of all, I wasn't going to be there to make the book club meeting, so I was like, what's the point? And second of all, I actually did try to read this. I got probably like 30 to maybe 40% of the way through it. I was listening to it on audiobook, and again, it was just doing absolutely nothing for me. Absolutely nothing. I wasn't interested in the mystery. This is about a school that used to be for like wayward girls, like if they had like behavioral issues or their parents just got rid of them or something and put them in this school. And it follows dual timelines of the 50s and the present day when the school is no longer active. And there's a couple overlapping mysteries. There may or may not be a ghost, but regardless, I was just not interested in any of it. I know that a lot of people do like Simone St. James, but the writing was just not, it wasn't doing anything for me. Like, it was very bland, it was very basic, it was not giving me anything exciting. I didn't like the multiple timelines. I would have preferred it to have just been set in the 50s. Like, I don't really know why the present day character was needed. I think it was just to like make it more palpable for modern audiences, but like that's kind of lame in my opinion. Like, I don't know. Just did nothing for me. So that's that. So yeah, that now brings my DNF stack up quite a bit. Okay, moving into my November TBR. To be honest, I'm keeping it a little bit shorter than usual just because I have been in such a weird reading mood in October. I was just like, I'm going to just start mood reading. I'm just going to start picking things up, and kind of just ended up letting go of my TBR, and I'm still kind of in the mood to do that. So who knows if I'm going to get to any of these. A couple of them I'm really definitely planning on it, but I have no idea what's going to happen. I will try to start off with a couple that I am definitely going to be reading because they're for book clubs. For the month of November, my book club has decided to read Genderqueer, a memoir by Maya Kobabe. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. This is actually a graphic novel, which we have never read for my book club. We've never read a graphic novel, and this one has been highly recommended, and I am very excited to read this because I saw it was on a banned books list in my state. And we talked about doing something where we were intentionally reading banned books from our state. So I'm excited to read this, and I've heard it's just amazing. So that's exciting. And then not for a book club, but I did just pick it up on audiobook. That is The Measure by Nikki Ehrlich. Pick this up out of total curiosity. The premise of this book is that everyone in the world above the age of 22 one night just randomly gets a box on their doorstep, and inside it contains a piece of string, and the length of that string correlates to the length of one's life. So it's this kind of, I guess it's technically magical realism, this story of everyone receiving this piece of unknowable knowledge, and they have to decide, each person individually has to decide what they are going to do with it, and the consequences of knowing kind of takes them to different places. And I was just curious. I mean, obviously, exciting premise, juicy premise. We like that. But I always fear that with such a high concept premise as this, like, it can really easily go wrong. And I just started reading this a couple days ago, and I've already been really, really impressed with it. I think I'm only like 25% in it right now, but I've been impressed. And I'm excited to finish this and see where it goes in the end. But I'm impressed so far, so that's exciting. Okay, moving on to this stack. I'll start with The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay because I've talked about it at length before. Actually, I think I've talked about probably all these books. Sorry. This is why wrap-ups, TBRs are kind of, may get repetitive, sorry. Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. I meant to read this in October. It was on my October TBR. Did not end up getting to it, but I am reading this and another book in this pile for a video. And I wanted to post it in November, so now's the time to read it. The Pallbearers Club follows two high school friends, and one of them believes that his friend is some sort of creature, some sort of monster, and it is a little bit of mixed media format where the friend writes notes. It's a memoir from the point of view of one character, and the other character is editing that memoir and writing marginal notes. So that's very fun. I'm reading this book along with The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides for a video, and I'm gonna read this really, really soon because I promised my friend it would be one of my first reads of November. But I think I'm gonna sit down and read Daisy Darker because I didn't do it on Halloween and I said I was going to, so this might be technically my first book of November. But this one will be shortly following, and it is just simply that my friend wants to know if I can guess the twist and if I think this is as fun as everybody else seems to think. It's a thriller. I don't know anything about it other than people call it the best thriller they've ever read. So we shall see. A couple other things. I really think I've talked about all these books in my previous end of year video, so sorry this wrap up is a little bit repetitive, but Never Whistle at Night, an Indigenous dark fiction anthology by Shane Hawk and Theodore C. Van Alst Jr. This has a ton of authors that I've read from before. Tommy Orange, Shubig Rice, Rebecca Rowanhorse, all included in this collection, as well as a bunch of others. Very excited about this. This is a recent release, and it is a short story collection all about Indigenous dark horror, dark stories. I'm not really sure exactly what it is, but I mean, look at this stunning, stunning cover. I'm very excited. I'm gonna just try to chip away at this. Maybe today, after this video, I might just go and sit down and read one of them. And then 2 books I'm kind of equally excited about and equally like I need to read both of them, but to be honest, I'll probably only get to one because they're both really long. That is The Secret History by Donatar and A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Tolles. I could never know how to pronounce his name. I should really look that up and figure it out. But anyway, these 2 books have been both on my TBR for a long time. The Secret History, of course, this is the original Dark Academia book, and it's often touted as the best one, so I really need to read it. And A Gentleman in Moscow, which I have been recommended to time and time again. I've been told this is fantastic and pretty much right up my alley. I honestly don't know much about it, other than I believe that this man lives in a hotel in Moscow. I really don't know much about what it is, but I've been told that the writing is like really fantastic and again like right up my alley, so that's great. But yeah, with these 2 books, I mean, these 2 books are not gonna allow for a lot of time for anything else, so that's why my stack is looking pretty small for November. In October, I ended up, even though I was in the middle of the month, I was thinking, oh, I haven't read anything. Like, this is going to be a really bad reading month. I ended up getting through quite a lot. So we'll see what happens this month. I have these on deck, but honestly, I'm in a mood reading phase that started in early October, and it's kind of continuing on, except the problem is that I have no idea what I'm in the mood for. I have absolutely no idea. Nothing is really calling to me in a very specific way. So, I don't know. We're gonna try these because they've been on my TBR for a long time, and we're gonna hope for the best. That is it. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me, and let me know as well down in the comments if you have anything you're really excited to be reading in November. Thank you so much. I will see you next time. Bye. Oh, wait. Say goodbye to Azula first. Azula, say goodbye. Bye.